Good evening. I hope you're all doing well. Today we are learning Maseches Menachos. We're starting toward the top of Tzadi Chesem and Beis. We're 3 lines down. Mirza Hashem, we'll get to the Mishnah on Tzadi Tesem and Beis, and we'll pause and really trying very hard to catch up. I know we're a couple blot behind. Says the Gemara, Umenolan de Badav lepusya de Aaron havu yasve. How do we know that the poles that were on the Aron were on the side, were on the smaller sides? So if this is the rectangle of the Aron, right? Like this, the poles were on the shorter edges. How do we know that they were on that side and not on the longer side? How do you know? Because there's no Mari Makomos that seem to indicate as much. Says the Gemara, I'll tell you why it's a svara. Dilma arko de Aron Havayasvim. Maybe they were on the length. Says the Gemara, it can't be that it was on the length. Because Amar of Yehuda, Tre Gavre be'amsa upalga lo mistage lehu. There isn't enough space. Let's take this again. This is my Aron. If the poles are here and here, so I have so much space to carry. I'll carry over here, you'll carry over there. But if it's on the narrow side, I have a pole sticking out here and a pole sticking out here, there's only an amma and a half. It's not enough space for two people to carry comfortably. And therefore the Gemara says it's not possible that the poles were on the length. They had to be on the width. Right? Poles affixed to the side.
Perfect example.
The rings must have been here because we know that if this is the Aron, the poles had to be going this way because we needed more space between the poles for the people to hold. So the poles must therefore have been
going
on a wide, no, the pole, this is a pole.
Yeah.
Why? Because that way you have this whole distance between pole bearer number one and pole bearer number two. But if it was like this, the poles were so close together, there was only an amma and a half between them. And Rabbi Yehuda says, not enough space. Says the Gemara, that's fine and all, but how do you know, Minalan, that there were 4 people that actually carried it? Uminalan de be'arba havu darulahu. Maybe 2 guys held each side. It's like a wheelbarrow, right? I have the handles. I'll hold the 2 on this side.
I always picture them standing outside holding the poles.
Yeah. So the Rishonim do discuss this Nakuda on how they were carrying, but the Gemara doesn't. Yeah, so the Gemara assumed when I was learning this earlier, the Gemara assumed that they stood on the inside. The person on the left had the bar on his left shoulder. So he was standing to the inside of the pole. That's how Rabbi Raznik explained it. It explains the complication, but it's not a chiyuv, obviously. It doesn't make sense. Anyways, how do we know that there are 4 people? Says the Gemara, that it was carried with 4 people. That's Trey, V'nasu is plural. And then it says, no, say, Hamikdash nami Trey, another 2. Good. Next sugya. Tanu Rabbanan. In addition to the table, to the shulchan that Moshe Rabbeinu built, the Gemara says, Asara shulchanos asa Shlomo HaMelech. There were 10 other shulchanos that Shlomo made. Shneemar vayas shulchanos asara. He made 10 tables. Vayonach behechal, and he put them inside the hechal. And he put chamisha miyamin v'chamisha mismol. He put 5 of them to the right and 5 of them to the left. Now, v'im tomar chamisha miyamin haPesach v'chamisha mismol haPesach. If you want to say that he took 5 tables and put them to the right of the doorway once he walked in the room, and 5 to the left, well, that implies that 5 tables would be north and 5 tables would be south. Im kain matzinu sheshulchan b'darom, but the shulchan doesn't belong in the darom in the south. The shulchan only belongs in the north. How do we know? V'atorah amra, 1/3 of the way down. V'ashulchan titein al tzelat tzafon. So that can't be. When we say that Shlomo made an extra 10 tables, it can't be that he put them north and south. Ella, says the Gemara, shel Moshe be'emtza. Moshe's was put on the north wall, in the middle of the wall, and then chamisha miyamino v'chamisha mismolo, and then going east and west, not north and south, going on the long wall of the Heichal. There were 5 that were closer to the entrance of the Heichal, which is to the east, and chamisha mismolo to the left of Moshe's table, which is closer to the Kodesh HaKodashim to the west. And in addition to the 10 shulchanos that were built, says the Gemara, Tanu Rabbanan, Eser menoros asa Shlomo. He also made 10 menorahs beyond what Moshe made. Shneemar vayasas ha-menoros ha-zahav, Eser kamishpat vayitein behechal chamisha miyamin v'chamisha mismol. Same thing, he made 10, and there were 5 to the one side and 5 to the other. V'im tomar chamisha miyamin ha-pesach v'chamisha mismol ha-pesach. If you want to say that there were five to the north and five to the south, that's a problem because the menorahs don't belong in the north, they belong in the south. In Kain Matzina Menorah B'Tzafon, which is the wrong place. And after all that, Torah Amra, Ve'es HaMenorah Nochach HaShulchan. The menorah has to be opposite the Shulchan. So in a classic structure of the Heichal, this is the east, this is the Ulam, and then you enter into the Heichal, and then the menorah is on the south side, bottom in our picture, and the shulchan is on the north side. And if the pasuk says that the menorah has to be nochach, opposite the shulchan, by definition, if the shulchan is in the north, that means the menorah has to be in the south. So how do we understand the pasuk where we see that Shlomo in fact built 10 of them, chamisha miyamin v'chamisha mismol? Says the Gemara, Elashel Moshe be'emsa. Moshe's menorah was on the middle of the bottom of the southern wall, chamisha miyamina. 5 were to the east and 5 were to the west. And that's how we had the 11 menorahs on that southern wall, but none of them were in the north. Tanichada, one shita says, Mechatzi bayis v'lifnim hayumunachim, that from half of the Heichal closer to the Kodesh HaKodashim, that's where they were. But Tanichada mishlish habayis v'lifnim hayumunachim. We have a stira. One says that these items were at the halfway point of the Heichal. And another shita says it was only a third of the way through the bias. So says the Gemara, below Kashya, Mar Kochashiv, Beis Kodshe HaKodashim B'Hadei Heichal. One was including, when he said a third, he meant a third of a different measure. It was a third of the Heichal plus the Kodesh HaKodashim. The Heichal was 40 amos long. The Kodesh HaKodashim was 20 amos long. So that's 60. So what's 1/3 of 60? 20. And the other shita holds that it was half of the Heichal, which is also 20. So therefore, there's no machlokas between them. And therefore, no steer between them. Tanu Rabban on another brisa, 2/3 of the way down, 2 lines before the wide lines. Says the Gemara, Mizrach Marav Hayumunachim. There, the shulchanos were put east and west. Divrei Rebbe. However, Rebbe Lazar Reb Shimon Omer no, that the tables of Shlomo HaMelech were put Safon V'Daram. And says the Gemara, my time with the Rebbe. Why was Rebbe of the opinion that the menorahs go east, that the Shulchanos go east-west, which is again the long wall of the Heichal? Says the Gemara, the reason he held that way was because Gomar mi menorah. He made a hekesh from the world of menorah to the world of Shulchanos. Ma menorah Mizrach Umarav, Av Hani Nami Mizrach Umarav. Just like the menorah was oriented so that the candelabra, the seven candles ran from east to west, meaning the menorah was not positioned this way in the Heichal, it was positioned this way in the Heichal. So this one is closer to the Heichal, this one's closer to the Kodesh HaKodashim to the west, and the eastmost one was closer to the doors of the Heichal. Fine. So that's the hekesh that Rebbe makes between menorah and shulchan. Ask the Gemara, menorah gufa menorah. Even the menorah itself, mechatesi. We know it's on the southern wall, but who says it's oriented east to west? Maybe it's on the southern wall, and the candelabra is open to the heichal, with all 7 equidistant from the walls of the Kodesh HaKodashim. Says the Gemara, how do we know this? Midichsiv b'ner ma'aravi. We say by the westernmost candle, Yarocho so Aaron Lifnei Hashem. So here's what it looks like. Assuming I had 7 hands here, the westernmost one is called Lifnei Hashem, which means that this one is closer to the Kodesh HaKodashim. That's Lifnei Hashem, which means the others aren't. Now, if you had all the candles facing the Kodesh HaKodashim, then none of them should be any different at all. Has to be that it's oriented east to west. That's what the Gemara says by the pasuk. Not all of them were lifnei Hashem, so it had to be oriented east to west. It can't be that it was facing, that the menorah was facing this way, north, south, because that would then mean that all 7 candles are equidistant from the Kodesh HaKodashim. Can't be. But Rabbi Lazar, Reb Shimon, my time, why do you hold that the Shulchanos went Tzafon L'Darom? Says the Gemara, because Gamar me Aaron. He made a hekesh from the Aron, which we know was in the Kodesh HaKodashim, and we know was one of the only kalim that ran opposite of the orientation of the Heichal, as we learned a couple of days ago. Ma Aron Safon V'Darom, just like the Aron, the length of the Aron was north-south, so too Avhani Nami Safon V'Darom. So too, when it comes to these extra shulchanos that Shlomo built, they also went north-south. Says the Gemara, V'Rebbe Nami Ligmar Me Aron. Rebbe, why don't you learn from Aaron? Why did you choose to learn from menorah? So says Rebbe, I can't learn the way that my counterpart Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon learns, because dan and chutz michutz ve'ein dan and chutz mibifnim. You can't learn from the Aron. The Aron is inside the Heichal. No dice. It's not happening. You can't learn about the shulchanos that are in the Heichal from the Aron that's in the Kodesh HaKodashim. You can only learn about things that are in the same space, and because the shulchan and menorah are both in the Heichal, therefore they can be learned from one another. But I'm not willing to learn from the Aron. Says the Gemara 9-10 lines from the bottom. Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon ligmar mi menorah. Why doesn't Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon learn from menorah like Rabbi did? Says the Gemara Amar lach menorah gufa tzafon v'darm hayamancha. He actually didn't agree. It's machlokas tanaim. How was the menorah oriented in the Mishkan? In the Heichal, was it facing this way with my pinky, the leftmost candle, the westmost candle closest to the Kodesh HaKodashim, and the rightmost candle facing east to the door? That's Rebbe. Or the other Shita is Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon, who held that it was actually it was on the southern wall, but it was facing north-south. Says the Gemara, if that's true that it was facing that way, then what about the pasuk? Elo haksiv yarocho sa'aron uvanav. The pasuk should say lifnei Hashem. And what we just said earlier is it had to be that it's east-west. How could Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon hold that the menorah was facing this way with all 7 candles equidistant from the Kodesh HaKodashim? Then what does the pasuk mean that the westernmost candle was going to be chashiv? Like how do you do that? So it says the Gemara, Melamid Shay Mitzadadin. The mitzadeh lehu atzdude, that the wicks all pointed in a certain direction. Let's see what this means. Tanya, this is a famous brisa, one that we learned when we were in elementary school. El mul pnei menorah yirushivas haneros, that the 7 candles faced the candles. So it says the Gemara, Malamed shem mitzudadim pneim klape nerem tzai. The 6, the 3 on the north, on one side, and the 3 on the other side of that middle candle, all the wicks pointed toward the middle one, and the middle one pointed toward the Kodesh HaKodashim. So even though it was facing north-south, the middle one faced forward, the wick, and the other ones faced inward toward the middle one. So then, problem solved. Amar Reb Nasan mikan she'em tzoi meshubach. We see from over here that the middle one is considered to be praiseworthy. This line is completely out of context and requires Rashi. Take a look at Rashi, 5 lines into the... This is a weird structured Rashi. 5 lines in the Rashis that's in the section to the right. Rashi Dibur Maskal Mikan She'em Tzoi Meshubach. What's he talking about? Kriyas HaTorah on Monday and Thursday. Take a look at this. Legabe Shalosh Shekorim B'Sefer Torah B'Sheni V'Chamishi. 3 people get aliyahs on Mondays and Thursdays. V'Ramin B'Maseches Megillah that ain't Pochsim Esor Psukim. We know that when we lay in there has to be 10 psukim. V'Ka'amar Reb Nasan Debe'em Tzoi Meshubach. Our Gemara says that the middle one is Meshubach. Namely, if you only have 10 psukim, so then the first aliyah gets 3 and the last aliyah gets 3. What does the middle aliyah get? 4, because it's Meshubach. V'Korei Arba V'Ashar Gimel Gimel. So that's what the Gemara learns, is that we are supposed to have this Meshubach status of the Levi Aliyah. A little bit interesting, because normally we say V'chibadato, that the Kohen should get, and we have Din D'Oraisa like that. That's part of the way we treat Kohan. It's very interesting Gemara. And how does this...
Sure.
Well, first of all, not every Aliyah is 10 psukim. Yeah. You'd have to look. But I don't know what this means. We don't always do 10 psukim.
No, often it's more.
It's often more. It's never less. But less than 10? Oh, no, but that I'm just saying in general. That's the exception and not the rule. Good. Let's get back into the Gemara. 4 lines from the bottom. Still got some ground to cover. And it's already 9 o'clock. I understand if you want to put the tables east to west, at least there's enough space. The length of the shulchan was 2 amos. And how long was the heichal? 20 amos. I can get 10 tables of 2 amos to fit 20 on the wall of the heichal. From the beginning of the heichal all the way to the Kodesh HaKodashim, I could do it. No problem. That's easy. I should say it's actually 40 amos, right? The heichal is 40 amos. So pasha, you can fit 20. We do know from other Marim Mukomos that it had to be the half closer to the Mishkan, to the Kodesh HaKodashim, excuse me. So it was all the way pushed to the far side, but at least there's enough space to do 20 in the half, no problem. How in the world do you plan on doing 20? It's impossible to fit Yud B'Kaf, Heichi Avu Yasve. It's the width of the Heichal going this way was exactly 20. There's no way you could fit that. It's not exactly 20. You need space to walk. It's not even feasible. So says the Gemara, not only that, but if you do want to say that it's Safon V'Daram, not only does it not fit, but Kohanim Heichi Havu Ailu, where would they walk? You put 10 tables, 2 amos across, a 20 amma space. There's no space left. And Visu, and furthermore, Matzinu Hey Shulchanos Bedarim. Not only that, if you do this, you find 5 Shulchanos that are Bedarim. We already said that that's not allowed. They have to be B'tzafon. Visu, Shulchan de Moshe Heichamanachle. We know that there were 10 tables by Shlomo. Where was the 11th? Or actually, where was the first, which was Moshe's? Where did that go? Well, the Tamech says the Gemara, according to you, Lamandam Mizrach Umar, if you're going to argue all the questions you just argued, then even according to the Shita that says that the tables were east-west, Mizrach Umar of Nami, Shulchan the Moshe Hecha. It couldn't be that they were all done in sequence and there were 11 tables. That would push us far over the midline, and we weren't allowed to do that. Everything had to be on the western half of the Heichal, of the last 20 amos. Says the Gemara, you've made an error. You were under the assumption that all the tables were laid linearly end to end. That's not true. Says the Gemara, last line of Tzadi Chesem Beis. You think it was all one row, the tables? No, it wasn't. Trey Doren, and it was 2 rows. And therefore we had plenty of room. Says the Gemara, well, not so simple. Top of Tzadi Tes, Amad Aleph. Shapir. I could understand if you want to say that you did 2 rows north to south. So take a look. In Rashi, you'll see that there's 2 of the same exact drawings. One's Mizrach Marav, one's Tzafon Darum. So according to the one that says that it's Tzafon Darum, that actually works out really nicely because it's only 5 tables. 5 tables, 10 amos of the 20 wide. All of them are in the north, and Kohanim have space to walk. You're good to go. The problem is that if you say the tables ran Mizrach Umarav, then we have a problem. Michti. Shulchan kama mashach mina kosel. Rashi explains why this is true, but let's say that we had the orientation like this. This is our heichal. This is the western half of the heichal, and you're saying that you have 2 rows of tables right here. The Gemara is going to show that the math doesn't work, and we end up traversing into the southern half of the room with tables. And here's why. Says the Gemara, let's say that on the northern wall of the Heichal, you have your first row of tables. Well, you can't have your first row of tables against the wall because people have to walk. So therefore, third line down, Shtei Amos Umechza is for walking. And then the width of a table is Ve'amadidei. So now we're at 3.5. And then Shtei Amos Umechza de Beni Beni Ve'ama. Then you have 2.5 amos plus the next table, which is another row of tables. And then Shtei Amos Umechza de Beni Beni Ve'amadidei. In other words, we have 3 tables. Look at the pictures. We have 1 row of 5 of Shlomo's tables, 1 row of Moshe's table, and another row of 5 of Shlomo's tables. But do the math in the following way. In between and on each side of the tables, from top to bottom, there was 2.5 amos. So you have 2.5 amos plus an amma of table is 3.5. Then you have another 2.5 amos plus another amma of table, which is 7. Then you have 2.5 amos plus another amma, which is 10.5. So if you have 10.5 amos going against the width, so the tables ran east to west, but width-wise they dipped into the bottom half, into the darom of the heichal. That doesn't work. Ishtakach, what do we find? The ka'achel shulchan palga da amsa b'darom. Remember, we said 10.5. Half of that last amma dips into the south. You're not allowed to do that. Says the Gemara, Mi savres shulchan de Moshe b'hadayu havi Yosef. You made a mistake. The way that Rashi painted our Gemara is that Moshe's table was in between the 2 rows. It was not in between the 2 rows, but rather low. Where was it? The midli lay, it was moved away. Umanach lay, umitse lehu lididhu porta. It was moved to the beginning. Kitalmid ayoshev lifnei rabbo. Look at the picture in Rashi, halfway down. So you see that the table was in front of, and therefore you're fine. Now everything is then going to be, in our example of this being the Heichal, everything is going to be in this top right corner right here. It's going to be to the west of the half mark, and it's going to be to the north of the half mark and the other axis. So everything is going to be in this top right corner, Moshe, and then the 2 rows of 5 for Shlomo. That is how the Gemara is explained. Hope that's clear. Rashi pictures should help. That brings us to another brisa, also about the shulchanos of Moshe. How many of these shulchanos got bread on them? Do you know how much baking had to be done? That was a tremendous amount of work. So the Gemara says, Tanu Rabbanan. And they were large. We learned they were 10 tefachim. They were massive. Yeah, the Mishnah speak. It was a Yazad Yahad or something. They were massive challahs. So says the Gemara, don't worry, Dave, you don't have to worry about the baking. Tana Rabbanan, we have a brisa, Asar Shulchanos Asar Shlomo below Hayu Mesadrin. There were no chalas on them. Ella al shel Moshe. Only Moshe's got. The others did not get. Shneimar ve'es ha-shulchan, the table, in the singular, asher alav lechem upon himself. And then Eser menoros asa shlomo v'lo hayu madlikin el b'shel Moshe. Yes, he made 10 more of his own shlomo, but only one got lit. And that was the one that Moshe Rabbeinu built. Shneimar menoras, singular. Menoras hazahav and erosel va'er ba'er. Fine. Rabbi Lazar ben Shamua Omer, no, al kulam hayu misadrin. Get out the baking sheets, everybody's making challah. And remember, this is every week, and it was a massive amount of baking, and every Shabbos it had to be switched out, everything we learned over the last many blats. Nemar, es hashulchanos, ve'alehem lechem upon, in plural. Uvekulan hayu madlikin. And not only that, Rabbi Lazar ben Shamua continues that all of the menorahs also had to be lit. Shnamar es haminoros, v'nei rosein, leva aram kemishpad. Lefanai hadvir zahav sagor. So we see that the menorahs are plural. Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, Omer, no, lo hayim misadrin ela al shel Moshe, but elamani mekayim ves hashulchanos asher aleim lechem hapanim zahav. What about the plural pasuk? Says the Gemara, elu shlosha shulchanos hayu b'mikdash. There were 3 different types of tables that were in the Beis HaMikdash. So let's just be clear. Reb Yossi holds that only Moshe's table got lechem. What does the pasuk of Shulchanos, the plural pasuk that we saw in the name of Rabbi Lazar ben Shamua, that to him meant that all 10 tables, all 11 tables got challah? What did Rabbi Yossi do with that? Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, he says, Elu shlosha Shulchanos. There were 3 different tables that were not being referenced in regards to the previous shita of Rabbi Lazar ben Shamua. What are the 3 tables? Shnaim shayu be'ulam. 2 were in that an opening room before the heichal. Mibifnim lepesach habayis, right on the inside. Echad shel kesef, echad shel zav. One was silver, one was gold. Al shel kesef, no sein lechem upon bichnisaso. You would put them down on the silver table on your way in. But when you left, al shel zav b'yetziyasu, you put it on the gold one on your way out. Why? Shemalin b'kodesh vein moridin. Because we needed to make sure that we only elevate things. And then there was another table, Echad Shel Zav, Bifnim Sha'alav Lechem Apanim Tamid, which was Moshe's table. So these are the 3 tables that we learn from the word Shulchanos. In other words, the way we learn these psukim, we're not even talking about Shlomo's tables. We're only talking about 3 that were the staples of the Beis HaMikdash, silver and gold right next to the ulam, and then one on the inside, which was a shulchan that actually had the breads on them. Now, this is a great Gemara, good Mar Makom. How do we know that we hold Malin B'Kodesh Ve'ein Moridin? Meheicha Tesi. How do we know? Says the Gemara 2/3 of the way down on Sadi Tesam at Aleph. Uminalon de'ein moridin. How do we know we don't go down? So Amar Rabbi da Amar Kra Vayakom Moshe es Hamishkan Vayiten es Adonav Vayasem es Kiroshav Vayiten es Berichav Vayakem es Amudav. This pasuk, of course, is talking about the establishment of the Mishkan and the sockets and the beams and the bars and the pillars. Look at the first word and look at the 3rd to last word in the pasuk. Vayakom and Vayakom. Ein moridin. We see that as this is Machlokes Rishonim how to understand this pasuk. That's the basic gist of how to understand this pasuk, is that Vayakom is still true in the end of the pasuk. Other Rishonim point out, because Moshe Rabbeinu was the only one who did it, he didn't let anybody else do it, not let, but he needed to do it because of Malam HaKodesh Ve'ein Moridin, whatever the case is. That's where we learn about Ein Moridin. Umenalan de Ma'alin. How do we know that we only elevate? Says the Gemara, Marvacha Bar Yaakov Adamar Kras, as Hamachtos Hachatay Ma'el Benafsho Sam Va'asu Sam Rikui Pachim Sipui Lamizbeach, Kikrivim with Nesham Veikdashu, V'yula Osliv Neisrael. From the story of Korach, we took their pans that used for Torah, and they were made into be part and parcel of the Beis HaMikdash. So we see, why didn't they use the pasuk that we saw earlier that the table was silver going in and gold going out? I don't know why we didn't do that. But that's how the Gemara says that we are ma'alin. Initially, these things were just for Ketores, not just, but they were used for Ketores. And now they're actually baked into the actual Mizbeach itself. 7 lines from the bottom on Sadi Tesam Aleph. The pasuk says, "Asher shibarta v'samtam be'aron." We know that when Moshe broke the luchos and he put them in the aron, Tani Rav Yosef, Malamit Luchos v'Shivir Luchos Munachim Ba'aron. This is a throwback to the Gemara in the Bavas that speaks about what exactly was in the Aron. It was only a certain size, what could fit the Torah scroll. Tosfos over there points out what pi is based on the diameter and the circumference. He figures out everything. Anyways, the Luchos and the Shivir Luchos are put in the Aron. And al derech drush, the Gemara continues and says, Mikan l'tamid chacham sheshachach talmudo machmas onzo. If there's a Talmid Chacham that Rahmana litzlan lost their memory, and it was an ones, it's not like they tried to not remember their Torah, or they tried to not be from anymore, they stopped learning, they had an illness. She'ein noagin bo minhag bizayim. You still have to treat him like a Talmid Chacham. Whatever status he was on before is the status he's on now. So says the Gemara. We learn that from Asher Shibarta v'Samtom be'aron. And now Simon Bitel Sarach b'Shachach. We're going to see a couple of Gemaras, and this will bring us to that next Mishnah. Let's continue. Last line of Tzadi Testament Aleph from Rish Lakish. Pamim shebitula shel Torah zehu yisoda. This is an unbelievable Gemara. Sometimes the bittul of Torah is its yisod. Rashi says, top of Tzadi Testament, Bezer Ramaschal shebitula shel Torah kigon shemavatel Torah lehotzas amesu lachnasas kala. V'zehu yisoda. Rashi says, Klamar mekabel schar ki'ilu yoshev umiyasta v'osek ba. It's as if you're doing exactly what you should be doing. So if a person gets up out of the base medrash to go do atzas ameis rachnasas kala, you're doing exactly what you should be doing. You can't do it all day long. Obviously, there has to be a balancing act. But if you do have to leave to go to a wedding or to do atzas ameis rachnasas kala, that's
for those mitzvahs. But you see, Yoshev Umiyasta is a greater schar, apparently. When you just say you're doing the right thing, you get the schar for what you're doing. So mitzvahs also.
Nope, right. It's ki'ilu you're learning.
There is a scale.
Ki'ilu yoshev umiyasta v'osek ba. It's as if you're learning that Torah, right? It's definitely unique. I'm also fascinated. I mean, I'm not overly shocked by the examples of the Gemara, but by the examples of Rashi of Hotzas Ameis Lachnasas Kala. But there are a lot of mitzvos. So I don't know why Rashi picked those two. I could think of a lot of different things. That's another layer too. Anyways, this is the language of the Gemara, that sometimes bitula shel Torah zehu yisoda. This is the right way to be miyased. How do we know this? Tichsiv asher shibarta. Amar lo Kodesh Baruch LeMoshe ye asher kochacha sheshibarta. May your strength go forth, for you broke them. If there's a Talmid Chacham who was sarach, which in this case means he got disgusting. A sirchon is something smelly, it's gross. So it means here that he did an avera. Ein mevazeno so befarhesia. We are not going to be mevazim in public. Shene'emar v'chishalta hayom v'chashal gam navi yimechal laila kisahu kalayla. We cover him like night. If he makes a mistake, we shield. We don't want the whole world to know that he made a mistake. Reish Lakish, unfortunately, this I really hope this is not lemaisa. Kol ha-mishakeach davar echad mi talmudo. Yes, I was going to say that. I was going to pick up on. You're looking. I saw that myself. Well, yeah. Kol ha-mishakeach talmud davar achad mi talmudo over belav. What? I don't see a change.
Really?
Not on Kol HaMeshakech. Is it on this line here? An aleph, what word do you have an aleph on? V'amar Reish Lakish Kol HaMeshakech? Your Gemara is more advanced than my Gemara. It's been around longer, that's for sure. That's incredible. I like my version better. I'm just saying. That's what the Gemara said. Huh?
It could go either way because if this chicken nuggets it says Kol Talmud Chacham, so
Right.
if you're not on
Right. That was my out.
on the Talmud Chacham, right. But on the other hand, Mishakech is more.
That's like
How does it?
it's
Pushing
lahachis.
it out of your memory.
I hate this Torah. I don't want it anymore. And then, like again, obviously you can't expunge a memory. Yeah. I don't believe it means like delete. That we can't do that. It could just mean not doing chazara. I don't know. I don't want to say other things that are going to get me in trouble. So
Flip side to say, see that he used to daven that he would forget like other things in his mind, so that he would have like more
space.
Yeah.
I'm good. I have enough space. I'm fine. All the shmutz I have in my head, I hold on to, and I don't even remember most of the Torah I learned. So unfortunate. It says the Gemara of Amar Reish Lakish Kol HaMeshakech davar echad mi talmudo, or your language called Talmud Chacham sheshachach, whatever the language is, over belav. Yikes! They violated an Isser. Shneimar Hishamer lecha ushmor nafshecha mod pen tishkach es hadvarim. Obviously, it's a lot from the language of Hishamer pen be'al. Ravina says, well, if that's true, Amar Hishamer upen shnei lavinin. Who look in the pasuk, there's two. And Rav Nachman Yitzchak says, none of you can count. Amar b'shlosha lavin shneimar Hishamer lecha u'shmor nafshecha me'od pen tishkach ez advarim. It's terrible. Says the Gemara Yachal Afilu Machmas Onsa, which was how this Agadata began at the bottom of Tzadi Testament Aleph. If it was an honest, no. Tamalomar Upen Yasur Milavavcha B'Mesirim Milibo Akastim Adar. That's someone who's forcing things out of their heart. That's where the Isra is. This actually is a raya for the language of Mishakeh. It's a bit stronger for the language of Mishakeh. Maybe that's why. I don't know. I mean, the Shita Megubetza still says what he says. So I can't believe that it's not listed here. It's very surprising. Next, Reb Dustay Reb Yanai Amar Yachal Afilu Takfalav Mishnaso. Very interesting. A person had such a hard time with learning. He's overwhelmed with his learning. Exactly what the lashon means, I don't know what to say. Rashi says Takfa, second line, Shalo Yachal Laha'amid Girsaso. Hey, you overwhelmed yourself. Maybe Daf Yomi. I don't know. Says the Gemara. How do we know that that's not the Isser? That there's no Isser by Takfalav Mishnah. So Talmud Lomar Rak, an exclusionary language. Rabbi Yochanan Rabbi Elazar Damar Tarva Torah Nitna Be'arbaim Uneshama Notzra Be'arbaim. The Torah was given in 40 days. Uneshama Notzra Be'arbaim in 40 days as well. We know before 40 days we consider it Mayim Be'alma. And says the Gemara, what's the comparison? Kol HaMeshamer Toraso. Anyone who protects their Torah, Nishmaso Mishtameres. Then their neshama is going to be protected. Someone who Rachmana Litzlan doesn't protect their Torah, ein nishmaso mishtameres. Nekuda. Tanu debei Rabbi Shmuel, mashal adam shemasar tzipor dror la'avdo. He gave a bird that loves flying away to his eved. Obviously, the Torah is easy to fly away from us. Amar kimedume ata she'im ata me'abda she'ani notel mimcha isar b'dameha. You, my eved, I gave you this bird. You might think that if you lose it, I'm going to take away a coin from you, an isar from your wages. No, I'm not. Obviously, the severe consequence of not being directly involved in Talmud Torah, not learning, not trying to remember the learning, not trying to hold cup, not trying to... My Rebbe told me this week, I was asking him, I was struggling with trying to find time to learn Musar and to learn Gemara. He said to me, a Ben Torah cannot go a week without a Chakira. You can't be without Lamdas. That's the ikar of limudim. And he said you need to steal time to learn Musar. If you can't make a seder for it, you need to steal time. So he said the sefer he carries in his jacket pocket is Mesilas Yesharim, not a Gemara. The Gemara is that's the meat and potatoes. And again, it's not to minimize the study of Musar. The study of Musar is integral. But the ikar limud is the chakira, is the kanu lakan. Well, and what are the nafkaminas? That's how we talk. That's how we talk and learn. So he said that's the ikar. That's what we should be focused on. We'll stop right here. Mir Tashem will pick up with another Mishnah on Tzadi Testament base tomorrow night. Wishing you all a beautiful night.